Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Norris and I'm currently lead environment artist at NVIDIA. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a walkthrough on some of the creation process that we used for Project Soul. A big part of it, pretty much by saying a big part of it, I mean all of it, was textured in Substance Designer and Substance Painter. This is one of the assets that we had in the scene, and I can kind of show you a little bit later what it looked like in the scene altogether. But right now I'm going to focus in just on this specific one so you can see the workflow in terms of creating smart materials, adding rust and grunge, adjusting individual layers, adding masks, things like that. And this is assuming that you do have some prior knowledge of Substance. So this won't be like necessarily a beginner's tutorial, but it's just going to kind of give you a good overview in terms of how I use this on a daily basis. So if we come in here to our right hand side, I'm just going to show you first of all some of the smart materials that I had created in terms of what we used on the project. And so I'll walk you through creating these in a moment, but RTX was just a nice prefix I put on all the materials to quickly find them, so I could just search RTX under Smart Materials and then just simply drag and drop whatever type of surface we're going to be needing. Since we did texture everything in Substance Painter, all the assets have specialized and individual grunge masks and can be used with decals or whatever else we wanted to make it completely unique. So it has tiling textures in them that allow us to keep the look the same across the assets, but then because everything has its own custom texture, it's also allowing us to get a lot more of that nice wear and tear that makes everything feel individual and feel like it's part of the environment, more lived in. Now I'm going to also kind of show you just how the asset is set up. So texture sets are, of course, each individual texture set's going to have its own base color, height, roughness, metallic, normal, and emissive, depending on what part of the object it's on. Some of the texture sets do not have emissive because there's no reason to output a texture if it's not there. But so setting up these texture sets is really simple. This is just a single FBX that I've gone ahead and imported into the project, and in whatever 3D program you have, Maya or Max, then I'm just applying a single shader to that group of objects. So I've gone ahead and UV'd this part of the object in its own one-to-one UV space and assigned a single shader to this whole section and called it Center Ring A Matte. If you go to the next one, you'll see that this is its own section, it has its own UVs, and it has its own material applied in there. And so this is just a great way to get more resolution out of your object if you don't want everything applied to like a single texture set. You can just really easily break it up, and it's nice to have everything in one asset, so while you're working on it you can make sure if you have like drip marks or things like that it's consistent across the asset, and you don't have to worry about like trying to match everything up in separate files. So this is just a really easy way for me to make everything work well together. Now let's go back into this initial here, the Center Ring A material that I have assigned, and I'll kind of show you just a simple process of creating one of these smart materials. If you haven't done one already, it saves a ton of time, and it's just a really great workflow to get you started, even if you decide to change aspects of it later, which I'll show you as well. So now this RTX dark metal here, if we open this up, you'll see I have a dark metal base. We have the scratches layer, and I can hide and unhide those, and you'll see the scratches on here appearing and disappearing. It's kind of some of the simple wear, as well as some of the dirt, which uses all of our AO textures and curvature maps and things like that that you're baking out inside of Substance. So it's really good when creating smart materials to make sure that whatever assets you're importing are all going to be consistent in terms of scale. So you don't want to import something that's like 1 meter in Maya, but it's actually going to be 10 meters inside the engine or whatever the final scene is going to be in, and then you have another object that's massive or small, and it's so you want to make sure that when you're actually texturing it, it's already the proper scale in terms of what it's going to be in the final engine. And the reason we want to do that is if you're using all of these different features like the curvature and the AO or triplanar projections inside of Substance, on one object maybe this is the perfect amount of edge grunge, but then on another object, if it's the incorrect scale and you have maybe more AO in it, or the curvature isn't matching up, or your triplanar projections are projecting these scratches and such onto a different scale of the surface, then you're going to get wildly different results when you're trying to use smart materials. Because smart material is generally supposed to give you something as simple as drag and drop. It gives you a nice setup for grunge, for details on the surface in terms of the scale and making everything feel like it fits into the space properly. So I want to say that first off, definitely make sure things are scaled properly when you first bring them in. So then let's go ahead back now over to here, and we're going to go ahead and just create like one of these smart materials from scratch. So this is the dark metal, and this is the third version. I had another version which was a little bit grungier, but on the project, because we have like simple changes and things that need to be done to match the art direction or engineering requests, then it's really nice in Substance that you can just change a few settings on your smart materials and apply those across your assets again. So I'm going to hide this. We'll go ahead and start off now by making a new folder, and I keep everything inside the folder because once you're finished with a smart material, this allows you to just easily right click the folder with everything inside of it and create the smart material. And it just basically takes the name of whatever your folder is and then puts it into your smart materials shelf down here. And so then that's how I can just search for RTX and find whatever it is I need. So we'll go ahead and name this one RTX Metal Dark Best. This is the best version we're going to ever make. Alright, now the first thing I want to do is create a fill layer. And so when you create a fill layer, you can just drag and drop that into your folder. And let's also go ahead and I'll show you another quick kind of cool thing that you can do with folders, because you'll notice now that basically whatever I have here is going to be applied to everything, and we don't want it applied to everything. We want it applied to the specific area that's going to be dark metal. So I'm going to go back up to my main folder and we'll add a mask, and you can add a mask with color selection. This is assuming that you've already gone through and set up all of your material IDs in your high poly, and so then in your high poly that will bake down onto your ID map here when you bake all of your meshes. So even though this is just one material, it's allowing us to have all these different separate materials within it because of that ID mask. ID masks have been around for a while, but if you haven't started using them yet, these things help a ton, especially in Substance Painter. So we'll go ahead and assign this folder specifically to the area that's going to be dark metal. Now we'll go ahead and grab this, and I'm going to call this the base layer. And you can either use like the list of materials that are already provided with Substance, or of course if you create your own inside of Substance Designer, then you can also just drag and drop those onto here. So like we have a couple materials at NVIDIA that either myself or Pierre or David Lesperance or a few other people would have worked on, and just whatever settings you've exposed within your graphs are going to show up there. You can change all those things, and this is essentially the same thing that's going to be provided to you that Substance gives, like some of these initial materials. And this is how powerful Substance Painter and Substance Designer together can be used, because once you start creating your own Substance Designer materials, bringing them into Painter and customizing them and adjusting them, then that's when, like, yeah, you can really take off and make so many different things with this so quickly. Like, just as an example, even this initially, you can start adding levels to it. So say we want to adjust the height on here. You just go ahead and bam, click up here, add a levels, and now we're only going to be changing the height levels, and you can see that's already adjusting the height inside this material. You can also go back, of course, and on every single material change either if it's UV projection, so if it's using the UV space, or a triplanar projection. You can scale that up and down. And then if say you don't want to use this height map, we can change this down to 0. So now there's no height map here. Maybe we even want to add a fill layer. We'll add a fill, and if we don't like the base color of what that was, now we can just come in here and add like a noise for your fill layer, and your fill layer can be applied to any of the texture sets. So maybe we don't want it to play with the normal or the metallic. We don't want it to mess with the roughness. We only want this fill layer to adjust our color here. So now you can use these awesome 3D noise that Substance has provided as well. You can create your own. You can just import a texture and like tile that. And so this is how you can take one material or one texture type and turn it into something else like immediately without a lot of extra work. So let's go ahead and get back to this initial material here. I already know what I'm looking for. So in this case I had used steel, rust, and wear, which is just something that comes with Substance. In a lot of cases, honestly, when it comes to metal especially, there's not going to be a ton of necessity to create your own Substance Designer materials. A lot of what's already there, like I said, with the power of being able to change so many things on top of that, you're almost kind of like wasting time sometimes when you go into Substance Designer, unless you've already got a big library of metal or different surface types you need. Of course, if you want very specific things, you may want to still create your own Substance Designers materials. But even here, like if we want a different roughness map on here, I'll just go ahead and add a fill. Go into my rough. Let's go ahead and add let's add like a grunge map, which they have all the same grunge maps that you can grab from within Substance Designer too. So a nice classic one, let's do Grunge Map 12. Everybody knows Grunge Map 12. And even from here, you can adjust that texture right on top of the metal surface until you kind of get the look you want from it. And even if you can't exactly get whatever look you're trying to go for, you can apply another levels on top and adjust the roughness from there again. So there's really so many cool things that you can do. So I just kind of want to get a little bit of the scratches from here. And let's go back into our base layer and find the metal roughness that you can apply across the full surface. Adjust that. Let's see here. So it may be because I have this set to 100%, so now it's actually taking over all the roughness. If I drop this down a bit, then we can start to show the roughness below it. So I've added a fill, and when you add that fill, like I said, because I have the roughness applied, it's no longer using the base layer roughness. So I'm going to kind of blend between those. Just under the roughness settings, you can change your opacity. If you want to blend them in a different way, you can also come under here, change it to like replace if you want to replace it, or pass through. There's multiply if you want to multiply it on top. So then there's different ways we can kind of blend those two until we get the nice roughness balance we're looking for. So now I'm going to come in here, lower this a little bit more again, so we kind of get some of that nice RTX shininess, because you know, once you can ray trace, everything's going to be shiny now. We're going to have tons of shiny games. Hopefully not. Hopefully everybody still just tries to make things realistic, and we get that nice balance between realism with the ray tracing on top of it, and that's going to sell things so much better. Like, ray tracing is huge, and I can't believe it's in real time now. It's really incredible. And it was really exciting to be a part of some of the first projects using ray tracing. So I can't wait for all of you to get your hands on it as well. Now that we have like our initial base texture here set up, I'm going to go ahead and say that the roughness looks good. We can start applying things on top of it. So one way, the really cool thing is it's kind of just like Photoshop. You can either blend things on top, or you can show layers beneath. So if we add another fill layer here, say we want to get some scratches in, I'll add another fill layer, and because it's inside of this same folder, it's only applying that fill layer to within that color material ID section. So everything within there is always going to help with that. Now this is going to be scratches, as I mentioned. So for this, if you want to do like a steel rough, just something that's going to look like an underlayer within that metal, like whatever surface was changed to create this, underneath it is going to be the bare raw metal that you're going to see, which is going to help show our scratches much nicer. So you can really go either way with it. You can want your scratches to be super shiny, or your scratches would be super rough. So it really depends what type of metal and what type of scratches you're going for. I'm going to go ahead and leave this kind of in the middle for now, and we'll just start adding our scratches and seeing how it looks. I also want to add the height here and remove the normal. We can try it with the normal. You can play with it how you want. I'm going to go ahead and increase the tiling a bit. And now, like I said, you can either have the scratches show on top or be below. It doesn't really matter. It's really just a matter of preference. So I'm just going to pretend that this is going to be created in a more realistic way, and by that what I mean is essentially your base layer, which is the main type of metal, it's going to be on top, and as it gets scratched, it's going to show through to the scratches underneath. And you'll notice, because I've moved the scratches layer underneath now, it's also showing the normals from the scratches on top of this initial surface, and that's because of the way the normals are being blended. So if we come back to here to normals up in our layers section, you can change the way that this normal shows through. So this is like the standard way of doing it, but if you click replace, now it's going to override whatever normals are underneath and only show this top normal. And you can also blend that by adjusting the opacity however you want. But for now I'm going to leave it at 100% and have it on replace. So the next thing we want to do is, because we want this to show through with the scratches, is we'll go ahead and add a mask to it. I'll just add a white mask because I initially want just this to show up. Alright, so the next thing, let's go ahead and select the mask, because you can select either the base layer or the mask. And from here we're going to start adding a generator. when you add a generator, these are a list of some of the initial ones that are provided with Substance. Again, you can create your own in Substance Designer, or even create a custom one within Substance Painter. So let's go ahead and apply the edge wear. And what we want to do is invert this, because as I talked about, we want it to show what's underneath, but not necessarily that we want this to like the scratches are showing underneath, but this is still like our base layer. Alright, so the standard metal edge wear gives you like a ton of really nice options. Again, all based off of those world space normals, ambient occlusion, and curvature maps that you bake out. And so just playing with all these can already give you a pretty good starting point in terms of whatever it is you're trying to go for with your grunge. You'll notice this creates a pretty even edge wear around the whole thing though. So playing with like edge smoothness, grunge scale, grunge amount, and curvature weight is what's going to help you find just the right balance that you're going for. So we want a little bit of edge wear on there. Play with the edge smoothness. Sometimes it takes a little while to update, and so you kind of have to be patient if you're working with like 4K textures, which we have here. So let's play with the scale. And I just like to work in 4K so that I can see everything I'm doing a lot better, especially because some of these objects are a little bit larger, and also because I'll mostly export all this stuff in 4K, and inside of Unreal I'll just scale it up and down from there. But luckily with Substance it's non-destructive, so you can always change this to even all the way down to like 128 by 128 if you want, and then bring it all the way back up to 4096. If you want to work faster, just lower the resolution. Things will update quicker, you'll be able to see changes a lot faster, and then whenever you have the look you're going for, then you can scale it back up. But as I mentioned, when working with assets that are a little bit larger in scale and things that are a bit finer in detail, you can't necessarily see what you're going for when you take the texture scales down too much. So I'll bring it back up to 4096 and we can keep working from there. Then say you've found almost what you're looking for. We can go ahead and start customizing it from there. So this is maybe giving us a pretty good base amount of grunge to start with, but we want to now get some custom painting in. So when your mask is selected, you can add a paint modifier and really easily just adjust your brush, because this is just going to be a simple circle, like, you know, fill that's going to be going across the whole thing here. So let's go ahead and change our alpha, maybe something like this, or you can even just change the entire brush if you want to just go quick. Maybe just use like dirt, something like that. And it's the same thing to scale up and down your brush as in Photoshop. The bracket keys right next to enter, left for scale down and the right bracket for scaling up. And you can just come in here and paint in a little more edge wear, things like that. If you want to add in scratches, they got scratch brushes. You can just paint in some nice scratches in there. And it's just like, it becomes so powerful because, like I said, everything can have this initial grunge applied on top of it, and then you just come back in with the paint and customize it even more from there. Now I'm noticing for some reason that my normal is coming back. I see. That's my fault. For some reason I turned off the normal on this, and so there we go. I lost the nice flat surface that I had on here. So you'll see in here, right now it looks like the scratches are popping upwards, and that's not quite what we're going for. So I'm going to adjust the height on this guy just by going into levels. We can come to the height, and you can scale it up so that those scratches go down. So I want to make this a little bit taller than the scratches below, but we don't want this to feel like super thick scratches or super thick metal in there. So now you can see they're just kind of barely going in, so it starts to feel like that detail is being eaten away off the edge. And I'm just doing that by adjusting the height levels, and that'll export into your normal once you're finished. So you don't have to worry, like, it's not just going to come out as a height map, it'll actually incorporate into the normals as well. Cool. Now you can always go into if you use this steel rust and wear, it's got some great features on it to add like color noise to it, which kind of breaks up the surface a little bit more. You can have dirt right on top of the surface already, so that adds like more grunge and wear if you want. Now we've got plenty of settings to play around with in here, but I'll go ahead and let you guys kind of do that in your free time, and then keep this more about just the general overview of how things are done. One other thing to mention really quickly about this color selection is when you're creating smart materials, it's important that on your high poly objects that you use the same colors for the same surface types. So whenever you're going to make metal dark best, you always want to make sure on your high poly it's going to be this same color, because when you create a smart material from this, it'll already have the color selection applied in there with this color picked from within the object. And so if you're using this across many different surfaces, many different assets, when you drag and drop that smart material into your layers list, you won't even have to do any work from there. It'll already just know, okay, this is going to be the metal dark. I'm going to bam, apply myself to this color surface, and there you go. So I just wanted to throw that in there really quickly as well. One more thing I want to add on to here before we officially create our smart material is I want to add some dirt. So I'm going to add another fill layer, and I just kind of want to show you with this the power of just adjusting your layers with generators, paint, fill, levels, all these kinds of things, and creating different types of materials just from something else completely different that's provided with Substance Painter. Because as I said, going back between Substance Designer and Painter sometimes isn't always necessary, and you're creating extra work for yourself depending how well something's going to be seen. So say, let's go ahead and find a cement or a concrete. Maybe it's called concrete. Yeah. So let's choose, I like concrete 01. I'm just going to drag and drop that onto my fill layer, and it'll update here in just a moment. Alright, so when I have this dirt that I'm going to apply to the surface, I don't want it to have any normal information or height information, because it starts to make it look kind of bad. We don't want any cracks, but I am going to just be using essentially then concrete as my dirt, because it's got some nice breakup in values and colors, and it almost kind of looks like a dirt once you start minimizing it to certain areas of the asset. You can pick pretty much anything that you feel might look like dirt, especially dirt, if you have any dirt. Let's check out what else we have in here. So attributes are just going to show you who created it and what it is and stuff. Don't worry about any of that stuff. I also don't want this to entirely take over my metallic, because sometimes, at least in UE4, if you have a harsh contrast or a soft gradient between metallic and non-metallic surfaces, it creates a weird outline that just doesn't look very good in Unreal Engine, or at least sometimes with sphere reflection captures or realistic reflections in RTX, it can create some weird results. So I'm going to go ahead and in the dirt metallic layer here, so I'm just going to go up to metallic. I'm going to drop down the opacity of this so it only slightly adjusts the metallic just a bit, so we get some variation in how strongly the color and the roughness and all those things are being affected by the metallic of the dirt. Now we want to increase the size of this a bit, and I would say another good rule of thumb if you are creating smart materials that you're applying to everything is if you use Planar Projection, this will keep a very even scale to all of your assets. So Planar Projection is going to be based off of the scale within Substance, and so no matter what size scale your UVs are, it's going to look the same across the whole thing. So maybe like the side here takes up a lot less UV space, and so it would actually make the dirt here a lot more massive because it's getting a different UV scale compared to the rest of it. So this will just kind of give you a cleaner look that gives you a better scale and texel density across everything, essentially. Setting up your UVs properly is always the first step to making it look good. But say you missed a thing or two here and there, maybe you're in crunch mode, just throw on a triplanar, you do what you gotta do sometimes, you know how it is. So we'll go ahead and keep that around this scale, and then that way once I apply this smart material to other assets, it's gonna look the same. And you can do that with everything, including your metal edge wear. You can apply triplanar to that too. And so you see it still keeps generally the same look, but it's just going to allow us to have a more consistent look across all of our assets. So I'll have triplanar on there, and you can even turn triplanar on here. So I'm just going to go back through and make sure everything has triplanar. If you did any fills, so like remember how I applied the roughness fill, we have to remember that that's going to need a triplanar as well. So if any of these things is actually UV projection, then you're going to get that difference again in terms of texel density and scale as soon as you apply this smart material to a different object. So we're almost done actually with this metal dark here. Now that we have an initial dirt, we're going to go ahead, I'm going to just go into the levels and get a little bit more contrast out of it. So I'm going to crunch this down in the base color and then maybe make it a little darker, something like this. So now we can see the roughness is pretty gnarly on this dirt. I want to go ahead and apply another levels here that I'm only going to adjust the roughness with, and try to kind of even this out a little bit because dirt isn't going to have such a wide range of roughness on it. Something maybe a little bit more along those lines, it would look pretty good. Okay, let's see. And as I mentioned, you can apply a fill here if you want to have a little bit of variation to your base color. So say I want to adjust that a little bit more in terms of the base color and get even more variation out of it. For my dirt, let's type in dirt and see what type of maps they have here. Let's go with Dirt 4, and it's just going to be a black and white texture, but it's going to help break up that dirt even more. And we'll just kind of play with the balance until it's something interesting. And remember, this is another fill layer, so we have to change this to triplanar projection. let's get the scale looking right on it. Maybe add a little more contrast. And so from here in my base color, I can change this to, let's try maybe like an overlay on top of the dirt. And then now I'm going to adjust the intensity of the base color of how what the opacity is on top of the dirt. And so now we can kind of get more of a, even more of a breakup, and you can just go something like that. So now we're getting this quite some differences here, just by some simple changes. And so things, when you're adding fills and levels and all these changes here, if I adjust the base color of this level, since it's underneath the fill here, it's stacked underneath it, it does not change this fill. So I would have to add another levels on top of this if I want to change anything below it. So this levels would actually adjust all of the new base color. You can see it even has the base color adjustments that I've applied there. So now we can come back in, get some more contrast out of this, or brightness, whatever you're looking for from your dirt. So let's just say that that's good there, and that's like an example of just some of the really quick changes where you can go from like anything to anything. You can throw the normal back on if you decide this would be, in terms of the dirt, you can throw like the normal back on if you decide that you want the normal of your dirt to actually affect the metal, and a lot of fun things just with so many quick changes and updates. You could really make anything out of this. You could even turn this into a rubber if you just start playing with the roughness more, changing your base color values to have like a lot less contrast. Maybe make it a little darker. You know, like, yeah, like it's just so cool how quick you can get different material types and how it just works. Alright, so now that we have created the actual dirt that we want, from this point I'm going to go ahead and add another mask. So I'm going to add a black mask for now, just get rid of all the dirt. And under our mask options, we're going to add another generator. And there is actually a dirt one that you can just click. But you'll see it's kind of gnarly to begin with and just applies a pretty intense layer of dirt across everything. So let's go ahead and drop this down a bit. It has just a little bit of dirt in there, kind of in some of these pockets and some of these AO spaces like that. But you'll see it's pretty even in terms of applying to almost exactly where the AO is, and so you don't get much breakup for how the dirt is caked on there. So you can either do that, adjust that by just changing the settings for the dirt itself, or even within the mask we can just come in here and add a fill layer. Triplanar, let's do a triplanar fill layer, and I'm going to go ahead and get one of these purlin noises, or you can look for another grunge. Let's check out the Grunge Dirt dried, and I'm going to change the way that this is overlaid on top of my dirt mask. Let's try it with multiply, and so this immediately already starts to break up the way that the dirt is using that AO. So now it's not an even layering of dirt wherever the AO is. It's a little bit more broken up, and we get a little bit more variation to it. If you want to change that a little bit more, you can even adjust then the opacity of that new layer on top of there. Then you can add like a paint and start painting in things again. So I mean, it's just so cool. All these things that you can do just within Substance Painter. Like I don't even have to leave Substance Painter and create anything in Designer, and I've already gotten a full surface type here. So now the RTX Metal Best is finished. I'm going to go ahead and right click the folder and create a smart material. And so now we have a new smart material with the name of the folder popping up right here. So RTX Metal Dark Best. And now if I actually just delete this whole thing, you'll see then I can just drag and drop that smart material right into my layers. It has the mask already on it with the color selection like I mentioned, and so it already knows exactly where to apply it on the surface based off of those material IDs. It's already creating the dirt and the scratches and the base layer exactly how we want it. And this is where, like I said, it's so powerful because you can just go through all of your assets so fast, just assign all your smart materials, and you're pretty much like done. And from there, of course, you can always update it, add customization like I mentioned, and make it look more unique. But just getting that whole base grunge and the base setup for your materials so quick is just a huge time saver. Another thing is, say we have this Metal Dark Best on more surfaces. You can also right click it, the whole folder, and use what's called instantiate across texture sets. So now I have to first come into my color selection because there's no other Metal Dark across this asset, so when I instantiate it, it's still going to instantiate it with the same material ID, and it'll only apply to that material ID. So I have to add another material ID for it to use. I'm going to go ahead and add this bottom one here, which you can see is this nice kind of green, blue, turquoise, kind of whatever the heck color. And when I right click this and instantiate it across texture sets, I can assign it to the ring D, which is this bottom one here, and it'll go ahead and basically take all of those grunge settings, dirt settings, edge wear settings, and just almost like instance them across all the texture sets that you want to instance it across. And so now whenever I update something in here, say I remove the dirt, then it's gonna remove the dirt on this surface as well. Or if I remove that whole base layer, now it's removing the base layer on this surface too. So the only downfall, unfortunately, with that is when you instantiate it across, you cannot do custom edge wear painting, and currently I don't believe Substance Painter allows you to paint across texture sets. This is something I believe that people in the community have spoken to them about, and it's definitely in consideration. I'm not going to speak for them, of course, but I believe that that's the case, and I hope that that's the case. If not, it definitely would be awesome. But let me just try it and see if it's maybe an update in the new one or not. Like I said, I don't think it is. So you can't paint across texture sets yet, but that would be a cool feature in the future. And if you instead don't want to instantiate things across different surfaces, then because it's a smart material, you can always just drag and drop your smart material onto that different texture set and customize the settings and change it from there. So because I just assigned to the smart material again, I need to add in that different color set, and now I've got it on this surface and I can customize it here. But one thing to remember now is if I change settings here that then I want to be applied up to here, then I have to come back in to this center ring and either drag and drop the smart material again after creating a new one, or right clicking and you can copy all the layer information and just paste that onto your layer information for the other one, if you have like custom painting or custom stuff on there that you don't want to use. And so then that's a good way to just kind of copy back and forth these different materials that you need. So that's generally the workflow we used across all the assets, was taking an initial asset like this, creating all of our different smart materials, and then running through the rest of the assets, assigning them, applying them, updating them, and changing them. Another way that this would be useful is, say you actually have like this base layer is a material actually within UE4. So what you would want from there is just simply to have these as masks that you would use for layering within UE4. So you'd have a dirt material in UE4, you'd have a dark metal in UE4, and you'd have a scratches material in UE4. And from there, if you just want to come into your levels and just make, like, essentially, like I said, like a mask. So from here, I'm just going to go back into adding another levels, changing the base color, and making this white. And so now we actually have a mask that can just switch between the scratches and the base layer, and you can just export that as a texture and bring that into UE4 and then blend between your two materials across different objects. So there's really so many uses for these generators, these surfaces, these smart materials, and whatever workflow you're going for, there's something you can do with it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me some comments on my Facebook page or on my ArtStation. So you can find me on facebook.com/purepolygons or on ArtStation as Jacob Norris. So here's the Facebook page, and then of course ArtStation at Pure Polygons. And so you can find me at either one of those places. Ask me some questions, check out my work, send a few likes, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Nice talking to you.